Hey everyone, it's Zara and I am back to fill my reading journal for the month of August, so let's dive in. First off, we have my reading tracker. As you can tell, I didn't read a ton in the beginning of the month because it was the Olympics. I spent a lot of my free time watching the Olympics instead of reading, so yeah, it didn't finish as many books in August as I wanted to, but that's okay. Then moving on to my overview for the month, I read 5 books this month, so kind of on par with the last couple of months. They've been a little bit lower in terms of number of books, but I did read some really good books this month, which is exciting. And I read 1,688 pages. Then moving into when I started and finished things, as you can tell, didn't read too much until the Olympics were over. That was the 11th was the closing ceremonies, and then things picked up a little bit near the end, especially Labor Day weekend. We were up at the lake, and I read a lot when I'm at the lake, which is really nice. I also have my summer reading challenge. This is from Peanut Butter Taco, and I probably won't finish any other prompts, maybe 1 or 2 before fall actually begins, because fall is this upcoming week. But I enjoy these kind of challenges, and this one was fun just because it was a seasonal one. Then I had tracking whether it was a Kindle book, audiobook, or a physical book, and for the most part, I don't know, I guess there was kind of an even balance. The audiobooks I didn't listen to. I had one that I was finishing at the beginning of the month and one that I started at the end. And then in terms of Kindle and physical books, I kind of went back and forth. I think most of the month I had, a Kindle book and a physical book going at the same time, just because when I'm out and about, it's easier to read a Kindle book, obviously, than a physical book because I have to remember to bring it with. I didn't complete Bookopoly or Roll Your Read, which is fine. Those will carry over into September. I started Drums of Autumn a couple of months ago, and I really haven't started back into it. It was one of my goals to pick it back up again. I will eventually, but still working on that one. And then I didn't write down. I also had started 2 other books that I should put on this list that I started and didn't finish, but that was kind of my TBR for the month. I didn't have any bingos, which is fine again, and my goals, I wanted to read 7 books. I only read 5, but I had a lot that I was in the process of reading, halfway done or so no big deal. So then, getting into my Goodreads tracker, this one is from the Shelfie Chronicles, and I just like to use it to denote what types of books I'm finishing. So I had my audiobook I finished at the beginning of the month, 2 physical and 2 Kindle books this month. And again, we are on the track, kind of on a plateau of reading 5 books a month. Hopefully I can read more than 5 in September. And then getting into the individual books, the first book I read this month was Hidden Figures. This is one that I've had kind of on my want to read, or had it on my radar for a while, and we were scanning for books to check out because my husband and I like to listen to audiobooks when we're going on road trips. So we were going to my sister's house, which is about 4 hours away, and usually we can listen to a lot of audiobooks on that trip, or almost read a whole audiobook on that trip. But it took us a little while to finish this one. We read it in a couple of different chunks, but it also wasn't my favorite as an audiobook. I'll put it that way. So Hidden Figures is a story of women computers, specifically African American women computers, which was basically a job that did a bunch of calculations. Before electronic computers, you had people that did all the math and checked the math and made sure the math was all correct. And so they were really essential working at NACA, which later turned into NASA, and getting, humans into space flight. So, very interesting, very cool impact that they had on history, but you don't really know a ton about them. They are, as the name would suggest, hidden figures. They're kind of buried in the history books a little bit, because they weren't, the front and center. They were kind of the background help, not the actual astronauts, not, the kind of figureheads of the project. But as interesting as their story is, I didn't like the way the story was told. It was hard to follow everyone. They're, being in, the 40s, 50s. A lot of the names were very similar. I think there were 2 Dorothys. There were some other characters that had the same, if not similar, names to other characters. So it was a little hard to keep everyone straight, especially as an audiobook. And then the way that it was told, you'd be having like some personal stories, and you'd flip back and forth between a couple of people. Then you'd go back to, NASA and tell a little bit. Then you go back to personal stories. And so it was a little hard to follow everything. I just didn't love the way it was told. I actually recently rewatched the movie on a flight, and I really liked the movie. I think the movie was really well told, but like I said, the book was a little confusing, and I don't know if it would be easier to understand if it wasn't the audiobook, but definitely as an audiobook, I wouldn't recommend this because it was just hard to follow. And even my husband was getting confused as to characters and who was who, and yeah, so I liked the material. I liked the story, the intent. I just didn't think it was told in the best way, so I only gave it 3 stars. So then moving on, I read Northwoods next. This was a really good book, so I gave it 4 stars. But my sister had recommended it because she read it for book club with some of her friends, and then they actually got to meet the author because she lives near where my sister is. Or at least lives in Wisconsin, was in the area, came to their book club. And so she had recommended it for that reason. And this one is like a mystery, murder mystery kind of. And the main character is Eli North. He is a small town cop. It takes place in, the Northwoods of Wisconsin, so northwestern Wisconsin. And he's struggling. He's had a lot of like hardships in his life. He has some PTSD. He has a drinking problem, and he's not really a good cop, but it's also generally a pretty quiet area, not much going on. However, one night when he's out on duty, he discovers the body of a teenage boy, and the book is essentially trying to solve that murder and trying to figure out what happened to the boy. I really liked it. I thought the characters were interesting, even though they, obviously he's not a wholly good character. He has a lot of dark spots. He's, got struggles in his life. I thought he was just really interesting, and I look forward to reading more books in this series. This one's the only one so far, but I think my sister said that they're planning on doing 3. Perhaps, but at least definitely working on a sequel. So I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars, and I look forward to reading more from this author and these characters. Next, we have my favorite book of the month. This one was Hidden Pictures, and I picked it up one time in a Kindle sale. Didn't really know too much about it, but it was a good price, and I had heard someone else had read it at one point, but I couldn't remember what it was about, other than it was a thriller, and I really enjoyed this one. So the main character is Mallory Quinn, and she is a recovering addict. She obviously has had a lot of struggles, staying and keeping clean, and she gets the opportunity to be a nanny for this child who is about 5 years old, about ready to go into school. So it's the summer before, kind of kindergarten. And Mallory, the family knows about her, struggles with addiction, or, that she's been clean for however many months. But they're still willing to take a chance on her. And she can kind of have this fresh start. And Teddy's a great kid. They are, bright and nice. And one of their activities that they like to do is they go to their room, draw pictures, and then, they'll give them to Mallory or to the family. And the problem with these pictures, they start off pretty innocent, and then they start to get a little bit darker and a little bit more spooky and a little bit more suspicious or interesting. And the drawings seem to depict the murder of a woman. And Teddy also has an imaginary friend. So then Mallory starts to wonder, is this imaginary friend, is it a ghost? Is it possessing him? Why is he drawing these drawings? And then Mallory finds out that there was a murder on the property, a long time ago. So then she's also wondering if the house is haunted. So the one really cool thing about this book that I really enjoyed, and I really think it added to the story, was they actually had the pictures in the story. So, whatever Teddy drew, then they would have a picture of it. And then, they would go back and reference some of the drawings and they'd show the pictures. And so I really, really liked that because I thought it added a really nice addition to the story, I guess. It really helped the story progress. It made the story make sense a lot versus just if you told about the images and you didn't have them pictured there. So this is one I would not read as an audiobook. I don't even know if it's available as an audiobook, but definitely because of the images that you want to, use to tell the story, you'd want it as some sort of a physical book. I read it as a Kindle book, but the images were still there too. So I really recommended this one. I gave it 5 stars. I really enjoyed reading it. I liked the twists. I really liked the pictures, like I said, so I gave it 5 stars. This was my favorite book of the month. Next up, we have a cozy mystery, so shifting gears a little bit, and this one is called A Death in Door County. And Door County, if you don't know, it's a kind of a vacation spot in eastern Wisconsin. I think it's off of Lake Michigan. And in this story, you have Morgan Carter and Newt the dog. Morgan owns this kind of oddities bookshop, and she is a cryptozoologist. So she's interested in kind of, the Loch Ness Monster or Chupacabra, Yetis, that kind of thing. And so the police have these mysterious deaths, and the deaths all have bite marks on them. And so they are pulling her into the investigation just to see or explore the possibility, could there be a, kind of an unexplainable supernatural, lake monster out there that's causing these deaths. And so, that's essentially what she's brought into the case, to figure out, how these people died and if there's a lake monster. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I liked the characters. I liked the different interactions. One criticism I will give the book is a map would have been really helpful. I've never been to Door County, and also too, I don't know if all of the locations in the book are real locations or fake locations. I'm assuming maybe a mix of both, probably more real than not, would be my guess. But it was really hard in some of the just more descriptive map or geographical descriptions to figure out what exactly we were thinking about, because there were parts that talked about currents, there were parts, there were a lot of parts where they were going on a boat to go to XYZ place. And so for me, I think it would have been helpful if there was a map included in the book, at the front or the end, even just, there doesn't necessarily need to be X marks a spot for this is where the body was, or, this is this. But I think having some sort of a map would have been helpful, just because there were a lot of geographical descriptions. And at one point, I think either looked up or almost looked up a map of Door County myself to try to figure out, you know, what they were describing. So that would have been really helpful, but I still gave it 4 stars because I enjoyed it. It was a cozy mystery, and I think there's more books in the series. I want to say the next one is about like a, you know, Sasquatch type monster, and so I'd probably read it, or, you know, continue reading books in the series. I enjoyed it. And then the last one, this one is just pure smut. This one is Sold. This is the second book in the Highest Bidder series, and it's essentially like a BDSM auction. I thought this had very little substance to it. I enjoyed the first book better in the series. The second book, I just didn't really like the characters. They were pretty flat. But like I said, I thought the story was really lacking. Yeah, I don't know if I will continue to read the series. I did buy them at one point because it was on sale on my Kindle, and I follow the author on, you know, Instagram because she makes fun videos, but I don't know. I don't know if I will continue reading the series. It's maybe not my cup of tea. So that was everything I read this month. But I hope you enjoyed watching. I will be back again in just a couple of weeks because I'm filming this a little late, but be back in a couple of weeks to talk about September. But September is already, you know, gearing up to be a good reading month too. I've read some good ones or I'm in the process of reading some really good ones this month. So I hope you enjoyed watching, and I will catch you in my next video. Bye now.